on literature, but there is a section in a textbook that is, kind of world literature as well, and incorporates some world literature. So this is something that I would use following up, the story and discussion of the selection from the Diary of Anne Frank. And so I would just give a little intro about, the Holocaust itself. And I would start by saying that approximately 5 million people were executed during the Holocaust. They estimate that approximately 6 million additional people were executed, but they were not documented or recorded. So they estimate that approximately 11 million people were actually killed during the Holocaust because of man's hatred and biasness for people who were different than he was. So there would be a brief, hi, there would be a brief intro to that.
Maybe somebody's mic. Is your mic on?
It might be. Do I just, let's see here. I don't know what I'm doing. So let me, sorry guys, I'm not a techie, so I might need somebody to help me here.
If your mic stays on.
The speakers are on your computer, that's what it is. Then you should be good. Okay, you're fine.
Okay.
Yep.
So I've incorporated in my presentation some of the pictures from the Holocaust Museum, some of the ones that moved me the most. And that could be another possible project that I would use as a journal writing. I do teach English, so I chose to kind of go with the writing and pairing and sharing aspect of this. So and I got an extra slide in there for some reason. Apparently, I've got a lot of extra slides. I don't know what I'm doing. All right. So one of the things that they did at the Holocaust Museum before we even started our immersion experience was they gave us these little passports. Each one of us got one of these little passports. And after the experience, I went immediately to the bookstore and asked, did they have a book that had these stories published in them? Because, this was just a bang right off the bat to read individual stories. I think they said they had 600 different stories, of people that were affected by the Holocaust. So each one has a person and you kind of follow their story. And then you'll know what their fate was in the end. So with this activity, they said they didn't have a book, but that I could go take as many of these passport books as I wanted. I would look for 30 and people started coming in and taking them, and I was in the middle of something. So I got 27. I just grabbed really quickly. So I'm going to actually distribute these. The plan is to have a classroom set. So unfortunately for you all that are virtual, I didn't prepare ahead of time for that. So I'm going to give each one for you to borrow. Please don't write in. That's what I would tell my students. Please, I plan to reuse these from various years. So for a number of years. So each person will briefly read about their person. And then when you're finished reading, once you're done reading, I want each of you to write a little reflection. In just a minute, I'm going to put up some guiding questions to help with that reflection, where you'll give a general synopsis. I'll just let you guys take one and pass it around. You'll give a general synopsis, a little summary of your person, and look at those guiding questions. Let me go to the slide that has those guiding questions. So once you're done, I want you to independently read this. Then I want you to basically do a writing or reflective writing with a brief summary. So the guiding questions are up here. Who was your person? Provide a brief summary. What was the fate of your victim? As we know, some people actually made it through, some people didn't. How does the story make you feel? And what other thoughts do you wish to share or discuss in your reflective writing? So that's your task for the time being. And again, I apologize to those of you that are at home that don't have access to one of the readings. I don't know why I didn't think about the virtual aspect at all, just the physically being present. I do have paper, pencils, and pens for you to do that. So read your story, and then respond to those questions, okay? And if y'all need to borrow this, those of you that are here in person. Here you go, Wendy. Here's one for you. These are stories about male and female victims of the Holocaust. Dance. Thank you, baby. I'm sure for those of you that are home, for other teachers that might want to use this, I'm sure that there are probably out there on the web all kinds of personal stories that you could research and use with your kiddos. If you're really interested and want to reach out to me, I can see what I can do about trying to share some of these. Again, I apologize to you all that are virtual that I didn't have at least one story put up there. I just, for some reason, just didn't think about the virtual aspect, just the live aspect. So I did do the PowerPoint, but that was when I thought we were going to do a whole group, and I was going to put it on the display screen for everybody. So,
Put it in the notes.
yes,
So when they go back and
yes,
watch the recording.
yes,
So
yes,
that'd be a
that's
good
a great idea. That's a great idea. So, but these, many of these stories are so tragic, and they just will break your heart. They, the hope is that, it really gives our students a dawning realization of how horrid this time in U.S. history actually was. So make sure that you've got a little written summary. That little summary would be something that I would have the students actually turn in to me. I do have some guiding questions here. If you need me to repeat those, I'll be happy. They're displayed on the screen for those that are virtual. One of our girls is taking a picture. That's a great idea. So the picture that you see displayed in the guiding questions was just awesome. It was a wall. It's actually 2 stories tall of nothing but photos of people who had experienced the Holocaust, and it actually was on one floor, and then you went downstairs, and it just continued all the way down. So there was so many things that were just, like I said, heartbreaking. So much to see. I highly recommend if you're in DC, definitely need to experience that Holocaust Museum, because it's something to see. Yes, I'll read them again. Yes. So, who was your person, and what was their fate? A brief summary, and what was their fate? Um, how did this story make you feel? And what other thoughts do you wish to share or discuss? So, who was your person? Provide a very brief summary of their story, and that would need to be in your own words, of course, not copied directly from the book, because I would have to tell my students, because that's what some of them would try to do. What was the fate of your victim? Unfortunately, for so many, it wasn't a good outcome. How did this story of this person make you feel? And then other thoughts, ideas, opinions that you wish to discuss. Okay, you're welcome. And the person that I read about at the museum, um, they were actually supposed to be taking a train out. They were actually from Austria, and they were promised a way out, and it didn't happen for them. So they actually wound up in the camps. 2 days after they were released from the camps, my character actually died of typhoid fever. So she managed to hang in there, and then 2 days later she passed away when she was released. So you don't always think about the disease um, the diseases that people experienced and were inflicted upon. Yeah, age would be another factor. So, it was tragic to think that she lived long enough to be released, which I'm sure was a great joy for her. But to think that she actually succumbed to a disease and passed away from the disease, that I'm sure was probably rampant. Um, and I read another one of our teachers' readings, passports, and her character was actually released as well and died from diphtheria. So, diseases that were, I'm sure, running around the camps and that many people were dying from during that time as well. So, like I said, we don't, well, often when we think of the Holocaust, we just think of people that were executed and killed, but there were some that actually made it through, that died from other causes or didn't make it through because they died from other causes. So, I think this is one of the most tragic events in world history. It's just, I think the Americas, and we do a unit on slavery in American literature. And to me, in the Americas, that's one of our, there's been many, but one of our most tragic events is slavery. But as far as world history goes, I think this is right at the top. So it's awesome. So right now, for those of you that are virtual, most of my folks are writing their reflective summaries, and we're going to do an activity with that in just a moment. So that they're actively writing and referring back to the stories and their passports. So this is definitely something that I do plan to use in my classroom when we get to the unit on the Diary of Anne Frank. And I think it's a great writing activity. We're actually going to pair and share here in just a minute. So that's, gives them opportunity to communicate and share their stories. So they're not limited to just one story. And this might be something that I do even throughout the year, just after we've done it, just as a, let's pull these books out. Let's do this. You remember us doing this. Let's read another story and do this again. I've got I've got six. So once you've finished writing your small reflective piece, I'd like you to pair with another person, preferably maybe somebody that's next to you. And I'd like you to share your writing, share your passport experience with a friend or a neighbor. Okay, so if you're finished, you might link up with someone and just take a few minutes to do that.
Okay. So my person's name was Sam Spiegel, and Sam was 17 when his house was bombed. He was from Poland. They were forced to move to the ghetto. He and his family were transported to Auschwitz. And while they were there, the Soviets were coming into Auschwitz to take control. And so they decided to move them in the middle of the night in winter and do a 4-day death march, basically, whoever actually got to the camp. Um, and while they were on the death march, or he survived the death march and got to the camp, and then that night, 3 or 4 of the other teens escaped, and they were in the woods for 10 days before the Soviets found them and liberated them. So, but he survived. He was liberated by Soviet troops. And then one of my favorite things visiting the Holocaust Museum, as far as like feelings, everywhere you saw "What You Do Matters." That was kind of like the theme, and you know what he did matter because it brought him his freedom.
Right.
Even though it went against the government, even though it went against his family. I'm sure he lost. It doesn't really say if he lost his family or not, but he had to give up everything to save himself. And that small adventure, well, I mean, large adventure, but that small mentality of
Right.
what you do matters.
Yeah.
And it was funny. I actually, when I got home, um, got the postcard from that said "What You Do Matters." That's plastered all over my classroom now.
Wow.
Why?
Love
Because
it.
it does. Every decision you make, no matter how big or how small, it matters.
Right.
If it doesn't matter to you, it matters to someone else. So
Thank you. I hope y'all don't mind that. I turn the screen on just so that we don't have more awkward silence. I know that they will probably hear you in the background. So let's go ahead and put it right there. Now, you're going to share yours, right?
Okay. So my person was Peter Phillips, and he was from Germany. He was born in 1931, and so the war broke out just right after such a small child. Well, that's when they were starting to come into Germany. His father was a cattle hide dealer, and his mom was a dress designer. Um, so whenever the Nazis started coming in, they started picking up in the movement, just traveling. And so they went to different places in Germany. They went to Czechoslovakia and stayed there. They went to Italy and stayed there. They went to Ecuador.
Wow.
And then finally, they were able to come to the U.S. And so at that point, both of his parents were finally able to have their original occupations restored. And even though, it was still a hard time for the U.S.,
Right.
it was beneficial for them. And he did learn that one of his grandmothers died in Auschwitz. And so later, Peter ends up joining the U.S. military and is stationed in Germany for a few years.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
And then he becomes a reporter for the New York Times. So it was a good story.
Anything else you to share? Thoughts, feelings?
Well, gosh, I had been to the Holocaust Museum before, and it was set up differently this time than the first time I had gone. And the part that had affected me so deeply the first time still did this time too. It was that big pit of shoes.
Yes.
You smell those shoes and you just feel that heaviness. It looked different, but it was so powerful. And one of the things that
Was I off the? No, you got it.
one of the things that I've done as a participant and as a teacher to encourage students to write is to give them an object, that they have to develop a story about. And to me, those shoes were one of the things
that would be like what I would use maybe for a
reflective,
just depiction.
Just something that belonged to somebody.
Right.
Every time.
Oh,
Every time.
well, you guys had stories that actually had happy endings.
Yeah.
I'm sure many of these were not the case. So. Okay. Let's see. I follow the Auschwitz Memorial on Twitter, and each day they present stories about the prisoners in Auschwitz who were born on that day. For example, today's stories feature adults and children who were born on July 27th, and they tell about them. My constant thought after I read each story is I wonder what that person would have accomplished had they not been killed. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that. I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, that would be a good writing assignment, though. Have them write the end of their story.
Yes. Or rewrite. Oh, I love that too.
Yeah.
Wow, that gave me goosebumps. That gave me chills.
Yeah.
All right. We
You have the opportunity to rewrite their story. What would
I actually have one pair that's still kind of working, but I'm afraid I'm going to run out of time.
My wrist is killing me.
honey,
I'm
I'm
so
sorry.
slow. I'm so sorry.
So I'm actually going to move on to the next activity. I'm sorry that you guys didn't get to. Ordinarily, we would spend more time and stuff like that on this, but where we're limited to just the 20-minute presentation, I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next assignment. So I have some blank copy paper, and I'm going to ask everybody to take a piece of blank copy paper now. And then on the table, I have crayons, markers, colored pencils, pencils. And we're going to kind of tie this into our social emotions right now. So what I want you to do, and your options are open here. Let me move to the next slide, or group of slides here, maybe. It seems like it's frozen just because I'm not on the right screen. Oh. It's amazing. There's the parent share. It's amazing. We teach in front of our kids every day, and we're so totally relaxed. And then when we're asked to present in front of our peers, it's like we become an anxious ball of nerves. At least it is for me. So So now we're going to take a moment to do some emotional expression. So using any medium that's provided for you here, like I said, we have crayons, colored pencils, markers, pens, pencils. I want you to just draw whatever's on your heart. Okay, so we're not all drawers. So some of the things that I actually recommended, if you simply want to draw an emoji, if you want to just do colors, whatever you're moved or feel moved to do, you'll not be judged on your artistic activity, and we would actually, make sure that everybody realizes that we all express ourselves in different ways. We all have different artistic talents. It could just be, some type of, lines or whatever, but take a few minutes and draw how you felt. How does this make you feel? What can you do an artistic release right now of, what this experience has made you feel? Okay, so, using any one of the mediums provided, you can use color, you can use pencils, you can use pens, but take a few minutes and just reflect artistically for a few minutes. Okay.
Okay, so,
Oh, I'm sorry.
everybody at their table, we can stop recording, because you'll have your recorded once,
Okay.
but
So once they're finished with this activity, then again, they will pair and share, just kind of share their pictures with someone around them and why they drew what they drew. And if this felt, like any type of release for them, did it help with the emotions that they were experiencing after having read and written about this experience? Okay, so and then that would end the activity, and I would probably display their works, those that were okay with that, on a bulletin board. I always tell my students to put their names on the back if they don't want to claim their work. So, does anybody else have any questions or comments? I appreciate Karen's comments. So, thank you guys. I appreciate it. Contact me, tanya.coffey@wolfcounty.kyschools.us if you need to further explanation or assistance or stories or whatever. Thank you.
So we're gonna stop the recording on